As Brian said, I'm Patrick Jacobwith. I'm CEO and General Counsel of Sunset Technologies, and I get to wear some other hats as well. Remember, as CEO and General Counsel, that means zero fun. So we're going to try and have a little bit of fun here this morning and the next day and a half. Sunset's been around since 2004. I joined Sunset in 2013. My partner, Brad, we've been doing this MSP thing, and I was talking to some folks last night. What is an MSP? A managed service provider. Interestingly enough, what we're going to talk about here is integration. Sunset is part of a national association that governs a lot of the dental space in terms of what we call MSP. The name of that organization, which has been around for, about 15 years, Michelle? Interestingly enough, the name of that organization is the Dental Integrators Association. Because in fact, as Brian said, that is what we do. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit. If you want to ask a question as I'm going through, I am happy to stop and entertain questions. Otherwise, just like all of you guys, I can get rolling on slides with the best of them, and we can just kind of click through as well. So let's have a little bit of fun. Again, we're going to talk about integration, right? The winning formula is what we believe is integration. And I loved, the comments from Brian as well. So for the math people in the room, Brendan, right? We were talking about this last night. No, it is not this type of integration, okay? So that's my dad joke. I got that out of the way. And now we can get into, thank you. Appreciate it. And my kids are cringing right now. But integrating technology. So I'm going to give you a perspective from the seat that we sit in on what integrating technology looks like and what that means, again, from our seat. And our seat is very different from the seat that many of you sit in. There's a lot of technology, as we know, in every single dental practice. And you can now hit national speakers. I was at Dykema, I was at DSO. There's a lot of people now talking about the need for technology to help drive revenue in the practice. So the experience that many of you and your team members that are in the practice have with technology looks like this. It's fun. It's the output, right? It's the x-ray you can look at with the patient when you're trying to diagnose treatment. This is where revenue happens in the practices. We all know this, but behind the scenes, there's a whole lot of other things that need to go right so that experience is positive for both your team, for the patient, and quite frankly for us, in the background, or the IT support folks that are in the room today. So what I'm going to talk to you about is not this front-end perspective, although we're going to connect some of those, but what's happening behind the curtain. And again, the seat that we sit in, because we have a very interesting and developed view of not only integration, but as Brian said, cybersecurity, HIPAA compliance. There's a number of areas that intersect here that we should all be thinking about. And then we've got all the technology partners in the room. How's that all looking? So the experience can be very frustrating. It can be very stressful. And that happens a lot of times when the integration isn't working. And so what we want to do is kind of dive into what's causing some of these issues and frustrations, and what's that perspective. So integration matters more than you think. And again, that's partly the seat that we sit in. So at Sunset, what I would say to describe and the essence of who we are, our purpose is rest assured, right? So we want you to feel rest assured. But what we really do, what our superpower is integration. Our team of big giant IT brains like Ron here, I didn't do the mosquito reference as my opening, I was thinking about it. Ask Ron about that later, guys. There's a a target-rich environment, okay? That's Ron's. So there's a target-rich environment on integration. We have a ton of opportunity to put things together. But I want to give you an analogy, and again, this is a perspective, so I want you to hang with me a little bit. How many of you have purchased a brand new, shiny, non-stick frying pan? Show of hands, everybody? And that is really cool when you get it, right? And you can cook an egg on this non-stick frying pan without any oil, without any additives, and you don't even need a spatula because it's so great, you can just cook it and then you can just lift up the pan and slide that egg right off the pan. Pretty cool, huh? Over time, what happens to this non-stick frying pan when you use it? Go ahead. It sticks. Why does it stick? Because we're using it, right? We're using it. We're hitting it with a spatula. We're forgetting and putting oil on it. We're putting not just eggs, because we cook a lot of different things. And so over time, what happens is that non-stick frying pan starts to look like this. So this is my little analogy, metaphor, whatever you want to call it. The network environment that you're working in isn't the non-stick fancy new frying pan anymore. It was. On one day, it was really cool. Everything was shiny and great, and that egg just slid right out. But guess what? Everybody needs to use that environment and is going to break down the beautiful non-stick surface that we had going on in that environment. So what we're doing behind the scenes partly is we're helping to still produce a good experience and outcome, right? So the X-ray still will display, and it's wonderful, but it's not as clean as it used to be. So on any given day, we're told we're the largest dental-focused MSP in the country. We have about 900 locations. So you can imagine the number of requests that we get on any given day, because here's the other thing, and when we're talking about the environment getting used, partly what's happening is, the pan is getting heated and cooled. I mean, the machines themselves they have a useful life, and I'll come back to that later. We'll talk a little bit about that. They do have a useful life. So the physical part of what we have, or even the software, the software is getting updated. It isn't the clean new software. Now we're doing some updates, and that's all part of the game. But here's a big perspective that I want you guys to really take hold of. The seat we sit in, not only is the physical side wearing out and the software getting updated, but every time you and your team use the software, use the printer, use the scanner, save a file to the wrong place, use the printer and not close it correctly, every time you use that, which is every single day, you're messing with the integration in that environment. Does that make sense? And it's like holding the tide back, right? But this is the thing. We love the fact that this is the environment we're in. It isn't perfect. And what we get to do using our superpower is help people understand that there's just some other things going on behind the scenes. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what some of those things are and what they look like. I bet you're waiting for me to put this pan down, right? Throw it? No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's move forward. So you're with me on the frying pan. You're going to have that visual now for the rest of the day, hopefully. Some examples, again, from the seat we sit in. So we're behind the scenes, right? And when you get stuff in the environment that's getting used, guess what? There's going to be issues. So newsflash for the non-technical folks in the room, the printer isn't broken. Okay? I can't tell you how many phone calls we get. The printer's broken. It's not broken. But what happened is there's an integration. So that computer that was trying to talk to that printer or that whatever machine, somehow, some way, that communication pathway got interrupted. And guess what? It could be any number of tens, 20, 30, 40, 50 things. And again, what we get to do using our superpower is quickly go in and figure out where the chain got messed up. So I was talking to Michelle about the slides yesterday, and I was laying this out for her, and she had an aha moment with her own printer. So you had an issue. Do you want to just?
I had an issue. I was printing things out for the event, and I printed them out. I was working at the dining room table, and I was printing to my wireless printer, and everything was fine, and I thought I got all the prints out, and I just left it. I went to bed, and I got up the next morning to finish doing it, and nothing I could do was printing. Like, the printer was there, it was connected, nothing was printing. I reset the printer, nothing was printing. And I was like, what happened? So then I just reset my computer. So I reset both of them, and then it connected again. Well, while it was printing, and I thought it printed everything, there was one page that didn't print, and it ran out of paper. So I just thought I was done. But because it ran out of paper and it still had one more print in the spool, nothing worked until I had to reset both sides. And I was like, seriously? I mean, an hour I spent, and it just took both sides.
Thank you, Michelle. So, by the way, another example of failed integration is the clock stopped at 44 minutes and 49 seconds. So I've got a long time. You guys settle in, because the clock stopped. Lucky me. So again, that was Michelle's, that's an experience. SGA folks, how many locations do you guys have? 120. How many multiples of Michelle are happening on any given day or any given week? And all tied, oh, go ahead, Ron, sorry. 130. Thank you, I wasn't gonna do that math in my head. So you can see just, that's with a printer, right? Or we have scanners, we have backup issues. All of these items are somehow correlated to integration. And again, that's the seat that we're sitting in. So when we start to talk with you about different stuff you want to introduce into the environment, there's a different conversation that we would like to have. And again, I'll come back to that a little bit later in terms of some of the strategy. How are we doing so far? You guys with me? Yeah? All right. And you can hear me? 'Cause I don't have a big voice, so turn the mic way up. Now here, and this isn't in a order of most to whatever, but again, this is our perspective. Not surprisingly, there's a lot of correlation on this slide and the last one, right? Sorry, I just screwed up your picture there. These are top reasons that we get phone calls or emails or stuff through the portal, because there's a lot of great ways that we can communicate with our customers and our locations. So again, unable to print. I was talking a little bit about that. But let's talk a simple one. The USB hub not functioning. How is that an integration-related item? Well, guess what? Brian also talked about security, which we take very seriously, and I will talk quite a bit about that later. In a security setup, you may have settings in that environment that don't really like when you plug stuff in, and they might block them. That doesn't mean the USB hub is bad. That's an example of integration. So how do we together figure out the right settings? So if we want to introduce a USB hub, because that's part of your business model, which it might be, then how do we do that, have the right conversation? And guys, this is just one of, think about, there are thousands of integrations that are happening, that need to happen successfully in your businesses every day, every week. And then you multiply it by 180, right? 180 locations? They just grew. So isn't that how it works? You just go buy stuff, right? So think of again, that was a USB hub. A big one for us, the practice management updates, that's a big deal because the Dentrix, the EagleSoft, the SoftDent, all the specialized practice management software, they're updating that software on a regular basis, right? They need to. That's important. You guys have cell phones, right? You can get an update, you're going to run the update, right? Everybody nod yes, you're going to run the update. And yet, we can't be asking Dentrix or Patterson or whoever's behind that practice management software to know your environment. So when they deploy an update, we do that for our customers because it's an example of an integration that needs to be tested. We have a sandbox, we run through it with multiple different resources, and then we run that stuff off ours so that your experience, and that's again what a lot of, I'm sure the IT teams in the room are doing, because otherwise you just run an update without even thinking about it, without testing it, right? The Curve folks, you guys are you're doing updates to your software on a regular basis. Do you just throw them out there?
No, we trickle it out in little tiny bits so it creates a very stable environment.
Yep, and there's testing and there's, because again, that's an example of an integration. There are so many things in the dental practice that are connected to the practice management software. Everybody's getting wowza about analytics. The analytics engine, let's feed them. And I think it's great, actually. It's a better way to run your business and getting one dashboard of everything and figuring out, KPIs and that kind of thing. That's a huge lift for us on integration because sometimes the actual hardware that's in the practice isn't up to code with being able to handle the feed that needs to happen. And nobody's asking us these questions before they make those decisions. And that is for us, it's kind of like Brian said, it's craziness, right? You're going out, you're spending money, but we're not really thinking about how is it going to play in the environment. And that's really everybody in the room, not just Sunset, is our challenge and our goal is to think about how we can open up a better conversation around integrating the environment, but not after, before. Because life gets a whole lot better if we think about that before. Now, that was a technology, and believe me, I could spend hours on these last two slides, but I'm not going to grind us to a halt. But you kind of get you're looking at that list, I bet a lot. Password resets, right? Who manages that? How do you do that? By the way, do you have multi-factor authentication? Because you should. But it's inconvenient, and that's why I say I'm the zero fun guy. I speak nationally on cybersecurity and HIPAA. I am a member of InfraGard. I have a higher level of clearance with the FBI. Sunset trades information with the FBI daily. I get flash traffic. As Brian said, there's a lot of bad stuff happening. And if you just simply had multi-factor authentication and a centralized resource for managing passwords, instead of leaving it out to the masses, you just took a huge step to securing your environment. Simple, but inconvenient. So not only am I zero fun, I'm Mr. Inconvenient. The titles just roll off your, it works, right? Okay, we talked about technology, right? So there's so much going on behind the scenes, and that's, again, our perspective. That's where we sit. We don't get to sit out in front. You don't want us to, actually. I wore a suit today, but we're sitting behind the scenes. We're letting you guys drive the revenue. But integration is more than just the technology. Yes, we have to make good decisions. We have to discuss this stuff, but there are people. Right, Marnie?
Thank you, yes.
There are people that need to work together. I like to say what we're doing is we're co-producing an outcome with you. It isn't all us, and it isn't all you. So how can we co-produce this outcome in a meaningful way? And so there's people that we need to integrate, and there's processes. A simple example on the processes. What we do with our customers, we do business review meetings on at least a couple times a year. But one of the questions we ask when we're onboarding, and then we come back to, is what is critical for you? Like if this thing isn't working, obvious example is the server's down, right? That's bad. You're not practicing. You're not generating revenue. That's going to the top of the stack, and that's getting immediate ASAP attention. But is a printer issue, is that a critical path function or not? Because many of these things, then what we do is we say, we got it, you've described the issue to us, and now we're going to take care of it off hours. We're a 24/7, 365-day-a-year shop. We answer the phone live every phone call, well, 98% of the time. And why we do that is we'd rather be working on the stuff through an integrated process when you're not trying to see a patient. We don't want to take control of that printer, computer, whatever it is, if it's not mission critical. Those are process conversations that we also need to have, and we need to have them on an ongoing basis, not just once. It isn't a set it and forget it. So we set some of those right expectations. So let's take a little step back on building a strategy. And I'm going to give you now another viewpoint in. So we talked about the technology and integrating. So let's look at it now from strategy perspective. And this is, I talked a little bit about this last year, and Brian was, cluing in as well. When you're building your strategy, you've got PE company or whoever investing in the DSO itself, right? You got plans, you've got strategy meetings, you're talking about the future and making, predictions and all that kind of stuff, EBITDA, as Brian is saying. And then you're also building a strategy around the investment into practices. So the acquisitions, those that are there, what does that look like in terms of staffing models, et cetera? There's a whole set of strategy that you guys are discussing, writing down, and managing to. And then the practice itself. How are you investing in the patient base? By the way, I learned from the SGA guys last night that they're doing really great with organic growth already. They're ahead of the curve, right? That's what you were telling me last night. That's huge because, as Brian said, that's going to be a next pain point. And that's inside of this investing in the patient base. It's right there. But here's the thing. Those are the key elements of strategy in our experience. So I'm giving you my perspective, Sunset's perspective. But what we don't have is a technology investment strategic conversation. It does not happen. Because guess what? Technology is an expense to be managed, to be squeezed. It isn't strategic or hasn't been thought of as strategic in terms of an investment strategy. And that is a real challenge for us and everybody in the room in terms of technology. Because we're missing out on an opportunity to have right conversations. Here's a simple one with the DSO investment in practices. So Sunset's developed a scanning tool that we have, somebody logs in on the server. There's a link on our website. We can do a scan of the environment in 10, 15 seconds and provide a full report of age of the equipment, last update, software, the whole 9 yards before you buy the practice. So that if you're going to make that investment, you also know that, by the way, that doctor probably stopped investing in technology 5 years ago. And so there's going to be a remediation that you need to do. We have DSO customers that still to this day will buy a practice, and then we'll give them a remediation report, and they're going to spend another $40,000 or $50,000 right after they bought that practice. Let's front load it. That's strategy. That's an technology investment strategy. So How do we do that? Well, let's start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And a suggestion, and again, this is just me because I have the stage, so you can kick me off whenever you want. Have you ever, the DSOs, and maybe you do this, but we have not experienced it, had an annual technology strategy summit with all of your technology partners? We get a chance to do a little bit of that with our business review meetings, and we sit in a great seat because we have a perspective on what plays well and what doesn't. But how about bring everybody into the room, or maybe every couple of years, and really set a strategy and include the people that know the best. And again, that's everybody in this room. Just a thought. So what is your technology roadmap? And again, that's a big part of what we're doing with our customers to help them. Now, a component of a roadmap, and there's a lot of pieces, like I said, we're trying to think about this strategically, but a component of that roadmap is an ideal lifespan of some of the technology. And this isn't about selling hardware, okay? This isn't about digging in your pocket now because Patrick's talking about you gotta pay more. This is about having a plan and knowing that, by the way, Server 2012 isn't going to be supported at the end of this year. And we knew that for years, and we've been trying to tell you that, but now all of a sudden it's a surprise. Let's get the right conversation. And then certainly and that's infrastructure, communications is a huge one, AV. I mean, there's a whole bunch of factors in here, and again, all the folks in the room. So what's the ideal lifespan? Last year, I gave Sunset's perspective on this, and we sit in a certain seat, so I didn't want it to be too self-serving. So we've got a partner, a financing partner named Great America Financial. When we have our customers that are interested in like a lease or rent option, that flows through Great America Financial, and they've been doing this for 25 plus years. They're heavily into dental and other parts, other business as well. But first what we have is, we have to understand perspectives. So our perspective, Great America's perspective on an ideal lifespan might be a little different than your perspective, right? I'm gonna squeeze the last ounce of whatever out of this laptop or this computer or this server or whatever. I get that, right? You buy a car and you want to drive it but you have to understand that after a certain period of time, the integration effort that takes, the ability for us to create a good meal out of this pan gets harder. All of us, not just Sunset, all of us. So those decisions have just other potential consequences in terms of employee experience, patient experience, efficiency, cybersecurity, all of the above. So we need to balance out the perspectives. This was my other attempt at humor, by the way, the boat and the land thing. And so what we did is I had Great America put together some information from what they've been doing for, again, over 20 years. So here's some perspectives from the seat that they sit in based on ideal lifespan. And they're looking at it from a efficiency and protection perspective. Network infrastructure, again, this is computers, this is servers, all the big stuff that you see. Their perspective on it for ideal is 36 to 48 months. Do you disagree with any of those time frames? Are they pretty close?
Pretty close,
A little bit shy, okay. And then their average term, so what and this has happened over 20 years. So this isn't just like yesterday or whatever. This is stuff that they've been tracking for a long time. So it didn't start out here, is what I'm saying. This has evolved to now a place where the groups that are doing the financing option will do it, and then in 3.5 or 4 years like on the computers, or maybe it's a little longer on the servers, they just do a refresh. And they're not getting into this spot because that became part of their business model. They can build in a monthly cost, and now they know what to expect from a budget and EBITDA perspective. And they're limiting surprises. So we call this Hardware for Life at Sunset, and it's a great program to help you level off and not have these big spikes that you don't want to have. So that was and again, we can talk more about that. I have no idea how much time I have left. Oh, sweet, okay, so I'll take my time. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna try to get done a little bit early just because I hope there's questions or comments. Because there's a lot of people that are smarter in IT in the room than me, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. But let's talk about cyber. Cyber as well is a big area that comes from partly integration. So what does it mean if, and again, I'll say this, there's a perspective, right? So back to this one here, we could have the same conversation on cyber. Is there really a risk? We've never had an issue. I can't tell you how many times that we've heard this and how many new customers we get as a result of them having a successful ransomware attack and they have no idea what to do with it. So one of the things at Sunset, like I said, that we're doing, I'm part of InfraGard. We have on our team 2 white hat hackers. So what that means for our customers, besides the fact that we're getting flash traffic from the FBI and we can run patch updates before the rest of the world even knew that there was an issue, we've got white hat hackers where there is a successful ransomware. They can go in and do what's called a forensic investigation. We're the only dental MSP in the country that can do that. And here's the thing from a HIPAA perspective, because now we get into the real zero fun part of me, because I'm a lawyer and the HIPAA thing. Brian said, and he's right, a successful ransomware attack generally is a de facto breach that needs to be reported, except for one key thing. If we can do a forensic investigation and show with 99% certainty that there was no actual unauthorized access to the data, then yours truly can write a letter, which I've written over 100 of them, to practices that have had people that we've taken on, and I can give them a certification from our forensic investigation. They can put that in the file, and they do not have to report that breach. Because in fact, it wasn't technically a HIPAA breach, as it's defined by the regulation. That's a big deal, and that's just one aspect of cybersecurity that we should think about. Other pieces, again, we're talking about a firewall, right? Basic 101 stuff, people know what this is. A lot of, again, smarter IT folks. A firewall is blocking the stuff coming from the outside world. Antivirus is handling after it's in the environment. How often do you think you should scan your environments with your antivirus? What do you think, Ron?
My answer for everything. How often should you scan your environment?
With the antivirus.
It should be always.
Should be always running. And it's doing quick scans, right? And then what happens, and this is another key piece that we're seeing from an integration perspective and what we do on the backside, what happens when there's an alert? Where does it go? Because guess what? If you have a firewall and you have an antivirus and they're throwing up alerts, and that's why we're 24/7, because we don't care if the alert is at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. We're going to take and start handling it right away. But if you send those alerts and nobody's handling it, or there's a big delay in what you're doing with those alerts, why have it? It's a waste of your money. And I'm not trying to challenge you guys. I'm just saying, you want to cut the budget, you want to take a whole bunch of risk, that's fine. That's your call. That's a business decision. We're going to advise you, but at the end of the day, you can think about what level of risk you want to take. that's that perspective that I'm blocking on the word. But anyway, on one end, you're going to be willing to take a lot of risk, or you don't perceive that there is a risk. And on the other end, you're going to say, no, we need to lock this down. We might edge more to that side, obviously, for obvious reasons. But that's a business decision, and we want to make sure we do that through strategy, investment, and integration. So you see how this stuff connects when we're talking about an integrated environment. And it's a dynamic conversation. It is not a set it and forget it. Because another thing that needs to happen, if you have an antivirus and a firewall, there's this thing, just like again with your phone, you need to do these things called patch updates. Over 95% of the time now, those patch updates are about security. We run those for our customers. Because as I said before, if you run an update that wasn't tested, that can do bad things to the integration in the environment and how things are talking to each other. So we do that off hours, and we make sure there isn't a bad experience or a interruption in the integration. But secondly, those patch updates need to be run on a very regular basis. There are approximately 10 million new viruses introduced daily by these very prolific cyber criminals. Cyber is bigger than the GDP of most countries in the world. This is a very serious issue, and like Brian said, the Russians aren't targeting you unless you have the codes, like that analogy, but there's a whole lot of other people that are able now to target you and target you in ways that they couldn't before, and it looks like a real email from that real place that you thought, and you click on that link, you click on that attachment, or your team members do, and guess what? You have a potential ransomware. And not only that, you click on that link, and these smart viruses get dropped in, but they do nothing because the first thing they do is they look at the time zone of the environment that they're in, and they do nothing until they're programmed to hit a time zone when they think it's off hours in that particular environment. So they will hit at 2 a.m., and that's when they deploy the bad stuff. And that's when the alert comes out, and somebody needs to monitor that and follow up on it. That's integration. And that's our perspective. That's the seat we sit in. And it's sometimes zero fun, but super critical. So, I'm going to start winding down. I just got a couple last slides. Let's change the experience. Let's talk about really developing an investment approach to technology. Let's talk about integrating not only the technology, but also the people and the processes. Let's develop a roadmap. And as I suggested before, have a summit. You know, annual would be great, even if it's like I said, every couple of years. You want to get the right people in the room to talk about how things are integrating. And by the way, we would love to be part of a conversation before you bought that 3D pan. Because we can tell you how it will integrate or not. And it's not a judgment on the actual equipment. There is just some that play better with certain stuff than others. And we just happen to know that. And we've been doing this since 2004. So we can change this experience through a focus on a better path on integration. And guess what? It's a happier experience, right? So beyond IT, you're going to hear a lot about integration the next day and a half. I mean, this was a perspective. I wanted to just lift the hood for you guys a little bit and bring you into our fun world, and there is actually sunshine in our world. We don't live in the basement. It's true. So in your businesses, the need for integration of people and processes and systems is critical to all of our success, because we are all co-producing an outcome. And when you invest in technology, it helps you to drive the revenue that you want and the efficiencies that you want in your businesses. And so giving technology a seat at the strategic table would be a wise thing. But beyond that, each acquisition, you've got other avenues of integration you have to think about, right? You're integrating new people. We've got different culture. How do you do that successfully when you're growing at phenomenal rates? And we have a couple of DSO customers that started with us. They had 40, 30 locations, and now they're up in the 150, 180 in a couple of years. How do you do some of these things well? Integrating people, integrating culture, the communication, all of that needs time and attention. So we're going to hear from a whole bunch of other folks. I invite you all to take good notes, and like Brian said, hopefully there's a note taker at each table, because one added thing, all the notes that are taken, I want you to get those to Michelle at the end, because we're going to combine all of those, and that's going to be published out to everybody as well. We're trying to have this think tank. That's why everybody's in the same room at the same time, as Brian said, and it's super important to share and to integrate and to think out loud with each other. Integration is all of us. I want to thank you all so much for being here. I'm looking forward to the next, again, day and a half. And before I exit, are there any comments, questions? Have I hit any nerves? Are we good? You tracking with me?
Great job.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate it, everybody.